Apparently, every informed person needs to know about Bitcoin because it might be one of the world's most important developments. That's Leon Liu, who was a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. So he must know what he's talking about, eh? Well, maybe. But crypto in general, look at that hair all over the shop. Crypto in general is also seen as a bit of the Wild West, isn't it? It's not traded in the same way. There are concerns, although they're lessening, I think, but there are concerns that it doesn't have the checks and balances, perhaps. You know, certainly the Securities and Exchanges Commission, I don't know if they've changed their view, but when the book I'm going to talk about was written, they hadn't really. I think they had only licensed or only worked with or agreed one cryptocurrency organisation. This, of course, bearing in mind all of the crypto worries, is about Sam Bankman-Fried, who was arrested and was arrested for fraud and all of that. He had the FTX and the Alameda companies. Here is the book. So you buy one, you get one half price, which is why I bought this. It's going infinite. And the thing is about this Michael Lewis book is that you don't need to sweeten the pot. You don't need to sweeten the story because you've got crypto on one side and Bitcoin and all the rest of it. And so many crypto tokens being created. Hundreds that, and there's an explanation of that in here. And I was, right, crikey. You know, I'm not a Bitcoin trader myself. I do know that you can have bits of Bitcoin, hence the name, and they can be worth millions of pounds. But then it's how do you get your money back? And I always think this. I've been reading a book recently. It's a wrestling book. I finally read Eric Bischoff's book. And for those of you who are crossing between wrestling and Bitcoin, as I do, he had shares in WCW, or was it Time Warner? Time Warner, I think, or was it? Yeah, I think so. And they then merged with AOL, of course, and those shares made him a millionaire overnight. Eventually, because he had a deal which was him as a contractor, he had to sell those shares. And he said, well, I was really cheesed off that I had to sell them. Yeah, but if you don't realise them, you know, shares are only okay, even if they're millions of pounds worth millions. They're only okay if you don't need to liquidise them. It's all about liquid assets, isn't it? You can say, well, on paper, I'm a millionaire. Yeah, well, when can you get that money for me? Oh, it's going to be 4 years. Well, you know what? You're not a millionaire then, are you? Because actually, you can say you are. I can say I am. I'm not, but I could say I was. But can I realise that? No. So, you know, if you can realise it and you can liquidise those assets, that's different. And that is what we have here as well. Because you don't need to sweeten this pot. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a really new and evolving and dangerous and difficult enough situation for there to be a sort of hint of something prohibited. You're not quite sure. It takes a certain person to trade crypto, and really those traders who have only been there for a few years in the established trading markets of main banks and all that kind of stuff, and even on those trading areas where you think, well, they're not a publicity hungry organisation like Jane Street, where Sam Bankman-Fried was trading. Crypto is even more than that. It's even more, I can't get a handle on it than that. That's part of its charm, isn't it? I can't get a handle on it, and consequently, I can make loads of money. And some of the trades in here, the way it's traded, and actually, Mr. Lewis, and there he is, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Lewis, he gives us some idea of how that might be done. He breaks it down. And really, it is extraordinary in two ways. The first way is, can't be that simple. And also, it's as absolutely convoluted and difficult as I thought it would be. I'm not that kind of person, you see. It takes a certain mathematician to do it. Sam Bankman-Fried definitely is. The second part of this story is Sam Bankman-Fried is an extraordinary character himself. And what this book does is it places him at the centre of things. Of course it does. He is those two companies. He is FTX and he is Alameda. He is. But it places him right at the beginning of things because Lewis met him, talked to him, was convinced by him, thought, I think I really like you and I feel convinced by you, by his altruism, which is about, it's a movement, isn't it? It's about how much money can I give away? I need to make more money so I can give it away. But then you play top trump altruism, don't you, and all that. It becomes a bit, when the basis of it is great. The ethos of it at the basis is great. So he's at the centre of this story, quite rightly too, and he is an extraordinary character, isn't he? He is a character that you generally would not meet. He's not like, that picture's great as well, isn't it? It looks like a naughty schoolboy or somebody who's been found out. And that's the general feeling with FTX and Alameda. More of that in a minute. But he is, he's seen as someone who is extraordinary, an extraordinary person. And that is very much part of this book. So you don't really need to over-egg that pudding. And he doesn't. Michael Lewis doesn't. What he does do is give you the build-up to Sam Bankman-Fried, as how he got there. And it just seems really easy. It's a segue from one thing to another. So suddenly, he's got his own organisation. It goes through some difficulties to begin with. People do leave, not on very good terms. But he then begins to make money. FTX, out of Alameda. FTX is the trading arm, isn't it? It's an extraordinary situation. He was at one point, he can't liquidize this money, but at one point he was one of the richest men in the world, a multi-billionaire. So a multi-billionaire. So you don't need to quote Chris Tarrant. So that's a UK joke, folks. So you don't need to over-egg that pudding. He is an extraordinary character, and there's quite a lot in here that will make you think. I thought that was the case from reports I had read. It's extraordinary to see it mentioned like this. He just reports what's here. What Michael Lewis doesn't often do is give you an authorial voice. He doesn't often say, this is how I feel about it. He'll mention it, but it won't ever be, here's my discourse about this. This is what I think about it. It's happening, and he's telling us about it, and the story is so extraordinary that you don't need to give us your view on it to push us in one direction or another. Some people are going to think, well, just let crypto traders be themselves. Let them be themselves. And some people, like me, are going to think, I think we need some checks and balances, don't we? And we probably have those now. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. It is a really powerful book in that respect. There's one issue I have with it. It really tells you about the aftermath. So you get the build-up of when this whole thing went wrong. Or did it? Is it just that somebody, when we had the crisis in 2008, was it 8 or 9? The way it started was that the money go-round stopped. So, correct me if I'm wrong, banks were lending to each other on a daily basis. transactions to keep things going. And somebody somewhere said, why am I lending this to you? I'm not quite sure. And it all stopped. And that was the beginning of, hang on a minute, let's have a think about this. It's all based on trust and animal spirits, isn't it? Although what it looks like FTX tried to do and Sam Bankman-Fried tried to do was to take all of that out, take those animal spirits out, and put everything down to mathematical calculations, and he was great at doing that, and flipping a coin to make decisions, which is what he learned according to this book from Jane Street, and take those kind of animal spirits out of it. I don't think you can. I think at some point someone's going to say, just a minute, what's going on here? And then you're finished. That's what happened with, I think, FTX and Alameda, it seems to me. There was suddenly a run and people were saying, I want my money, please. I'd like my money, please. So when somebody stops trusting that, it's animal spirits. You cannot change it. You cannot add AI to it. Because at some point, because AI is not spending the money. No robots are spending the money. At the end of all these money trails are human beings, folks. Even if it's pension funds or hedge funds, they are human beings who created them and actually run them. So it's humans at the end of all this. And whether you say it's AI or not, at some point, humans are going to say, not quite sure about that. And if you are in the kind of organisation that could have a problem, then there might be a run. And that could be disastrous. Now, what you do get is the way that things came about. You get him coming up. You get the aftermath of that. And you get some of the way things came about. The problem I have with this book is that you don't get enough of how that happened. And there are no posited discussions about, well, I think it happened because of, I think it was just because, I think it was because of a decision that was made here, or, and you know why that is? No one knows. No one blooming well knows. That's extraordinary. So it's lacking in that respect, this book. I mean, I'm not saying it's a poor book. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not saying it's not really enjoyable. This book is really enjoyable. This character, this person, he's become a character. He is a person, even though quite a lot of this suggests that there's a kind of blankness at the centre of that. But he is a character for this book. That makes this book, it's enjoyable in that way. It's enjoyable because it's crypto, which is walking on a tightrope over an enormous yawning chasm, isn't it? And sometimes you fall in, and probably most people will at some point. It's about whether you can get back up. That wasn't the case here. It's about the characters who are around that. But how did it happen? That is still something we need to talk about. But nobody wants to have that discussion, do they? Because if you have that discussion for any length of time, maybe somebody will say, just a minute, this is not working, is it? And then we're all in trouble. Ta-ta.